Roy Williams is a marketing man. His clients want to buy whatever advertising sells the most product.
It's Rick Dees in the morning. All communication should be poetic. Bring him in, please. Roy Williams!
Essential to any company is the ability to get your message out. My guest says, don't give up hope. Joining me now is Roy Williams.
Yes, so how do you speak in poetry to people and get them to do things you want them to do?
Here to talk about the advantages of radio advertising is the author of a new book called The Wizard of Ads.
Joining me is Roy Williams. Today we're talking about his book, Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads. This is one of the most important books that anybody can read.
What makes people do the things they do? More importantly, how can we get people to do what we want them to do? With another part of the answer to that question, here's the Wizard of Ads, Roy H. Williams.
We've talked about the brain. We've talked about Broca's area of the brain. We've talked about surprising Broca with unusual combinations of unpredictable words. And that's the key that unlocks the door into the imagination. Now, we're going to get very practical for a few minutes. We're going to talk about choices that you will make every time you put together a sales presentation or write an ad. Now, what we have to do is we have to first realize that this is not a checklist, that if you make the same choice every time, that was foolish. You see, the same choice every time is predictable. And predictability is what Broca hates. Broca can't stand the predictable. Broca is delighted by unusual, unexpected things. So whenever I give you these 7 choices that you have to make, I want you to think of these as not rules. And please never choose the same way each time. Think of these as choices. Left or right, green or red, north or south, up or down. There's not a good and a bad, a right and a wrong, except in 1 or 2 of these. You see, the first of these choices is intellect versus emotion. Both of these are good things. There's not a wrong choice. It's just that intellect and emotion are as radically different as sight and sound. They are stored, processed, and retrieved from entirely separate parts of the brain. We tend to think of the emotions as coming from the heart, but technically, they both come from the brain. Now, an intellectual ad must present new information in an attempt to lead listeners to a new conclusion. Now, what we mean by this is if you tell a person the same thing they've heard lots and lots and lots of times before, they will continue to make the same decision that they've made time and time and time again. So if you're going to speak to the intellect, if you're going to win the mind and hope that the heart follows, what you must do is you must make absolutely sure that you're giving them new information. Because what appears to be a person changing their mind is actually impossible. You see, people cannot change their mind. They can only make new decisions based upon new information. Without new information, there will be no new decision. Now, unsubstantiated claims will kill an ad instantly. You see, we tend to speak in broad generalities. We tend to tell people what we think they want to hear, but we very rarely ever prove those things. Right now, at this particular point in time, there's a campaign happening nationwide that I am absolutely stunned by the beautiful visual impressiveness of this campaign, and I see it everywhere I go in America. Dodge, different. So name a difference! You see, that's an unsubstantiated, vague, ambiguous claim until you name a difference. But if Dodge said, Dodge, different, with polarized windshields to reduce nighttime driving glare, Dodge drivers have fewer after-dark accidents. Ah. If they said, Dodge, different, with stainless steel exhaust systems from engine to rear bumper, Dodge drivers never have to see the Midas Man. Ah. Both of those, by the way, are true. Now, why doesn't Dodge tell us these specifics that would substantiate this claim of being different? Ah, but what about emotional ads? My real favorites. Because, see, I believe that if you win the heart, the mind will follow. And emotional ads don't actually introduce new information. What they do is they tell us what we've always known to be true, They confirm what we have long suspected. You see, emotional ads don't present new information in the hope to lead us to a new conclusion. Emotional ads tell us what we've always known, but make us feel differently about it. This is the genius behind Tom Bodett for Motel 6. You see, Tom Bodett never once told us something we didn't already know. Tom Bodett always told us what we had always known. You see, we already knew that Motel 6 was the lowest price of any national chain, about $24 in most places, a little more in some, a little less in others. Now, how many times have you ever heard that? You already knew it. But when Tom Bodett shared with you what you already knew and made you feel a little differently about it, gave you a different perspective on the information, suddenly you began to feel differently about Motel 6. Now, why did they do that? It's because Motel 6 had the courage to answer the question honestly, a question that should be asked of every advertiser. The people who are not doing business with you, is it because they don't know about your business? Or is it because they do? You see, we already knew about Motel 6, and that's exactly why we didn't stay there. We didn't want to admit that we were that poor, or that we were that tight, that we had to spend $24 for an evening's rest. The problem wasn't an intellectual problem. We had all the intellectual information. The problem was an emotional one. You see, Tom Bodett didn't change what we thought about Motel 6. They changed how we feel. That campaign's been going now for 15 years. One of the most brilliant emotional campaigns in the history of American advertising. Now, the second copy choice, the one that you will always have to make, intellect versus emotion being number one, will you win the heart or will you win the mind first? Typically, if you win the heart, the mind will follow. Winning the mind and hoping the heart will follow is a little trickier, but sometimes it's the path you have to take. Now, the second copy choice will be the time reference. Is it then or is it now? Is it then in the past? Is it then in the future? Or is it right now? You see, the power, and remember Broca's area of the brain, present tense, verbs. Wait a minute, there's that verb thing again. Verbs. Verbs are the words that we attach to the actions that we're trying to describe. And until that customer sees themselves do in their mind what it is you want them to do, there is no chance that they can actually take that action. They have to see themselves taking the action in their mind.